Morning, everybody. Right. I think we're crooked. Hang on a minute. Let's do the whole thing not at a funky angle. Let's rearrange the pile of boxes. And there we go. That's better. Hello. Welcome to this month's Seasonal Changes live stream dyeing. We're going to be dyeing up the colour that you all chose. It's been closer this month than it was in previous months. But the winner, excuse me, the winner that came out in the end was Blossoms, which is the one with the pretty pastel pinky colours, which isn't going to be to everybody's taste, but it is very, very spring-like. We're not quite at the point where we've got loads and loads of blossoms yet here in Wales. The ornamental cherry has flowered, but like the proper cherry and the plum tree, which are growing up against the wall of my new studio, they're not in leaf yet and not in flower yet, but hopefully soon. And the daffodils are all out, so it's certainly the signs that spring is coming. So it seems nice to have a nice bright and cheerful coloured fibre for us to be dyeing up for the whole of the month of April. So in case anybody's not familiar which colour palette we're using, it's that one, which has got quite a strong, vibrant coloured green. And it's the sort of green you kind of only get at this time of year, that real yellow colour. We have a lot of oak trees around here, and when they first start erupting into their leaf, the colour, it is almost like a chartreuse. It's not green at all. It's really, really yellow. And then there's a very, very pale buttery coloured yellow, a pretty pale pink, a slightly darker toned pink, and then a very, very pale sky blue. So that's the colours that we're aiming for. There we go. We're going to start off with the darkest colours. So when we're thinking about our colour palettes for this, I always try to think of darks, lights, mid-tones, because that gives you options for doing colour work. Because colour work, you don't just want contrasting colours, more importantly is contrasting tonal values. So we're going to make sure that we get those darks to be nice and dark. They're not going to be as super dark as they are in some of the packs, because our pales are going to be so much paler, but we do need to make sure we kind of build up enough depth of colour there. So let me install some gloves so that I can keep my hands relatively normal colours. Though at some point during the day there's always a leak. I always end up with some random smear. Right, so we're going to go for dyeing this chartreusey greeny colour. Now this might sound like an odd thing to do, but I'm actually going to make this using my grey dye, because this grey dye has got a blue undertone to it, and I know that it makes a really good, nice, strong, zingy yellow. So two, three. Okay, so I'm going to write that down before I forget what I've added. But that's made basically using a mixture of grey and some lemon yellow. And then, as ever, we do our quick cheating testing. Now, greens are quite hard to test because they often end up coming out looking darker than they are. The yellow becomes a little bit more dominant as they get heat set, because when they're in this wet form, they're dark, and then when they go onto the fibre and then the heat set and then they're dry, you get much more light reflecting off them. But that's where we've got to. I think I've overdone the grey on this. It's a nice colour, but it's not quite got enough of the zing that we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this to one side because I will use it again later during the day, and we will go for not so much grey. So this is why I really like this optics system for dispensing the big quantities of dye, because it just makes it so much quicker. Right, so I've halved the quantity of grey that I was using, and that should, I think, get me roughly where I want to go. Okay, I'll bring it close around to the camera so that you can see. So that was the first version. That's the second version. It's probably the smaller dot up at the top there. It's going to come out roughly in the ballpark of what we were wanting. For a nice, bright, vibrant green. So that's our green colour. I'm going to do the darkest pink one next. So let me have a think. The pink dye is really, really intense. So actually I'm going to use much less by way of volume on it. Let's go for 1, 2. So that's our plain pink dye. By itself, that's a really, really aggressive, bright shade of pink. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put some brown into it, but I'm going to pull off some brown to measure out some smaller amounts. Because I don't think I'm going to need a full 25 millilitres, which is what they dispense. And of course, the thing with these is that I need to be able to repeat them so that when this first set sells out, I can dye up more. Right. So that's had some dark brown put into it. And we'll add just a tiny bit of water because it will need more liquid in order to spread out all the way over the dye. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's about where we want to go. So again, this is going to be darker than it will actually be in real life. So I've just taken that really bright pink and just knocked the vibrancy just down a notch. So remove those over there so they're out the way. So that's our two darkest colours out of the way now. We've now got the mid-tone, well, the very pale yellow, a sort of mid-toned pink and a very, very pale blue. Now, dyeing the really very pale blue is always tricky because it's amazing how little blue dye that I need in order to end up with something that's really quite strong. So let's go for that one next. Which blue do I want? I think it's going to be the turquoise. That one. So this is the cool tone bluey turquoise colour, but it's not just going to be the turquoise by itself. I don't think that's going to give us too bright an effect. Do I want the grey or do I want the black? I think we'll go for the grey. So the grey is, as I said, it's a blue toned grey, but it's just going to knock the vibrancy of the turquoise down a notch. So let's go for 2 turquoise. Leave that on there. And 2 grey. So that's, you really need such a small quantity of dye when you're dealing with this blue and trying to get a pale colour. It's always surprising just how little dye you need to end up with shades that are very, very pastel. So, and there we go. So that's going to be our very, very pale blue shade. And I think that's going to be just about perfect for what we want. And write that down. Let's move that out of the way so I don't accidentally add more dye to it. Let's grab some more containers. Okay, so the two colours we've got left are our yellow and our paler shade of pink. Let's do the yellow first. Now this is quite a warm, buttery sort of yellow. It's kind of like the middle centres of the blossoms. So I have two yellows that I can choose from. There was the lemon yellow that I used when I was making up the green, but I've also got this one, which is a warmer shade of yellow. There's not that much to choose between the two, but we're going to go for the slightly warmer, more buttery kind of colour. Which I know if you're in America, your butter isn't yellow, but over here butter is yellow. And that's kind of the vibe that we're trying to end up with. Now again, this is going to be a colour where we need surprisingly little dye. Let's go for 5 of that, because I need to have enough. I need to put something else in this, because if I just use the yellow by itself, I'll show you what that looks like. You'll see how it's too primary toned basically. So that's just the yellow by itself. So even though this is a warm toned yellow, we need to actually bump it slightly more towards an orange colour. And to do that, so I'm trying to decide which to put into it that's not going to be too over dominant, because I've got a few different choices. We could put some brown into it, but I kind of want to keep it, I don't want to muddy this bit down too much. I can put some of the magenta, which is in the flowers themselves, into it. Or I've got a warmer toned red. Let's go for the warmer toned red. Oh, I do also have an orange dye, but I think we'll just go for a tiny, tiny bit of the red, and we'll see how that comes out. Let's have a look. Of course, I have picked the syringe that needs replacing. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure that I'm being really, really precise about this, because it's going to be amazing how much of a change that will make to this yellow. Write that down before I forget, because I can always cross it out. And let's have a look. So that's the difference, just adding that red tone into it. Now again, that looks maybe a little bit too orange coloured, but I know it's going to become paler, and it's going to become more yellow toned as its heat set. So I think that's not going to be too far off on the sort of scales that we're mixing out here. It possibly wants like 0.5 milliliter of red. But I haven't got syringes that can measure that accurately. I can do 1 milliliter, and that's my lot. So I'm going to go with that's good enough, rather than try to mess about and end up with something that I can't entirely replicate. But that might be one of those colours of, as anybody, if you remember last time, I dyed 2 versions. Well, I dyed the 2 pale teal colours using 2 completely different sets of dyes, and they came out entirely the same colour. They lacked the difference in tonal value. So I went back and re-dyed it. That might be another occasion where once it's on the fibre and dry, that I look at it and go, no, that needs a re-dye. And it might be that I mix up double quantity and measure up half of it or something like that. But we'll see how that looks on the fibre, because it may well be right, and I'm overly worrying about it. So that leaves us with our final colour, which is the paler, dustier shade of pink. For which we need some pink. So we need some of this magenta dye. Now this shade of pink is actually verging slightly more into kind of a mauvey type of colour. So whereas with the dark pink I added some brown to it, with this one what I'm actually going to do is I think I'm going to add a little bit of black into it instead. I've run out of syringes. There we go. Let's find you. Right. So this I'm going to try and make a step darker than the yellow and the blue, but it needs to definitely be paler than the other shade of magenta. So we're going to go for 10 of that magenta. And then I need to get another container. We're working our way through every single container in the studio today. I want some black. Because we're just going to add 1 milliliter of black into there and see where that takes us to. So yeah, I don't think I showed you what the magenta looked like just by itself. So you can see, there we go, that's just the magenta by itself. So it's a really, really quite sort of punchy, vibrant kind of colour. And we just need to just take the edge off it a little bit. I've just squirted black everywhere. Well done, Katie. Let's have a look. Black dye smeared on syringe with black markings. There we go. And the black that I use has got like purple undertones to it. A little bit more water. So that's just going to just head us slightly into a more purpley kind of colour. Let's have a look. That's where we've ended up. I don't think this is pale enough. So I think that's got, it's too dark a colour. It's not contrasting nicely enough with that one. So I need to probably use less dye to end up in the ballpark that I'm after. So what I'm going to do, these will go into there. I think a dye studio ends up being filled with containers holding things that will be useful later on. And usually the mission by the end of the day is to have used everything up. So we're going to reduce our quantity of magenta dye. We're going to halve it again. As I say, I don't want this to end up being too dark. Now, the worry is that if I just add 1 milliliter of the black to this, this is going to be too purple. This becomes the tricky thing when I'm dyeing these very pale colours. It becomes quite hard to alter the shade by quite a lot, by not very much. Let's have a look. That's going to be a little bit more like it. Here we go. So it doesn't look on the screen like there's that much of a difference, but this is going to be quite a bit paler than that one. And if you compare that one to our darker pink, we're definitely going to have contrast, which is what we need. How does that compare with the image? I think it actually needs a little bit of the brown in it as well, because it's not a very vibrant colour, that pale pink. So let's just try that on the basis that I can always go back and remix it. So we're going to put 1 brown in as well. So that's it with the added brown. Now on the screen it kind of looks like there is no difference between any of those, but to my eye, looking at it here, there is quite a difference of shade, and by just adding that brown in, we've just made it a slightly more muted colour, which I think is going to sit sit better with the overall sort of set of the palette, because otherwise it's going to end up looking a little bit like a bowl of sugared almonds. I'm going to go for one more of the brown, I think. I'm just looking at it and going, I don't want this particular, this is kind of almost acting as the neutral. So it doesn't want to have too much vibrancy. There's a lot of vibrant colours going on here. Okay, there we go. So that just with one more bit of brown. So that's the one with that was just a large amount of pink and the brown going in it, and then that's the one with the little bit of extra brown that we've been working our way through in these various permutations to work out what colour we wanted to do. I hope that's going to be pale enough. I think it will be. It should be, because the amount of pigment that's in there. You're perched on a precarious pile of boxes that just at that moment decided to take themselves for a slide. I think that's going to be. I think it's going to be okay. So we've in the very dark pink. We've got 60 millilitres worth of dye, and in this one we've got 8 millilitres. They should be different enough for us to get what we're after. So I'm going to trust the process, trust my knowledge, and go, I think that's going to work. As I say, the one that I'm still a little bit doubtful about is that lemony yellow, as to whether it's going to be too orange, whether I need to go back and re-dye that, maybe by adding in some brown to just knock the colour back slightly. We shall see. But for now, we are ready to put dye onto fibre. So any of you who have been here lots before will have seen me do this a gazillion times. So if you disappear off, I won't be offended. So the fibre's been in soak overnight just to get it nice and wet. And then even my semi-solids, they're all dyed using a low water method, because I think that works best with fibre, and it's just being zigzagged out onto a piece of cling film, ready for going in the heat setting. So we're just pouring the dye over the fibre. I bring the angle of that camera down a little bit, you shall see more, but you might miss the top of my head. Stick this cling film down, that'll make life easier. Okay. So this is our pale blue. So pale colours, you have to sort of work quite hard to try and make sure that the dye gets spread evenly all the way over the fibre. Particularly over the ends, let's not lose that off the edge of the table. And these are semi-solid colours rather than ones that are completely flat in their tones. So there is always a little bit of variation in where the colours are and how intense they are along the length. Let's have a look. I think that needs a little bit more dye on that corner bit. Okay, so that's going to be our pale shade of blue. We need some citric acid. One of the jobs for today, looking at the citric acid container, is going to be to make up some more citric acid stock solution. So the citric acid just gives the fibre the dye the conditions it needs to make permanent bonds onto the fibre. That's why these sorts of dyes are called acid dyes. And citric acid it's the thing that makes lemon juice sharp. The citric acid that I buy is actually food grade, so technically you can eat it. Right, just put you out of the way over there. It's not particularly, it's incredibly sour. If you like eating fuzzy sweets, it's the stuff that's on the surface of the fuzzy sweets. And it's used in lots of things as preservative. But the place I tend to buy it from, actually, they supply lots of places that make like cosmetics and face creams and bath bombs, all those sorts of products. If you use bath bombs, they're a mixture of citric acid and sodium bicarbonate, I think it is, bicarbonate of soda anyway. And the two, because you're mixing an acid and an alkali together, that's what makes them fizz. So this is our paler shade of pink. But yeah, some people use vinegar when they're heat setting dyes, which I'm not a fan of because I don't like the smell very much. Whereas the citric acid is completely odourless. And even though I dye in a way that tries to make sure that there aren't lots of fumes entering the studio, so I don't have to worry about having fancy ventilation systems and anything else, it's still, the whole place ends up smelling of vinegar. Okay. So that's our, hopefully going to be our paler shade of pink. We shall see whether it is pale enough once it's been heat set. Next up, we've got our yellow, which I'm uncertain about. We'll see how this one looks. So nice thing about doing this first thing in the morning as opposed to the afternoon session, like the last few live streams that I've done, is that if they're not right, I'm going to know probably by coffee time this morning, so I'll be able to dye up some more. That. I won't have to come back and do it another day. But the thing to remember about because we're dyeing onto something that's white, where actually it's slightly creamy coloured, it always slightly changes how they look. So yeah, so this seems orange right now, but I think it's going to end up looking more yellow. Okay, that's good enough. More citric acid. Need to go and fill up that container again. So these just get wrapped up really nice and tightly to hold all the liquid in place before they're heat set. one obviously ended up with all the washing up liquid in it. But yeah, and then my job for this afternoon is I've got to sort out the, well, no, I've not this afternoon. The rest of the job this morning is I need to dye up some more of the superwash and Cheviot and silk base, and silk and bio nylon base, because I dyed quite a lot for the last shop update, thinking that it would leave me some for Wonderwool Wales, and you've only gone and bought it all. So luckily I've got some more base, so I shall get some more dyed. So, because it's one of those things, it's always popular at the show, so I always like to have some, but it's also really popular online. But yeah, I think nearly everything that I dyed is heading out the door tomorrow morning. So right, there we go, that's our green. Let's have some more citric acid. So I mix it up in a grate. I do like a probably about 15 litres at a time of the stock solution in an enormous pan, and then just put it into a dispenser with a tap. But that container is now nearly empty, so I need to get the can out and mix up some more. There we go, right. Fresh container filled. And okay. So that's our green. We've just got the dark shade of pink left to do. There we go. Right, so that's our last one. Let's give you a swirl round. So this is the darkest shade of pink. So you can see how much easier it is to spread. When you've got more dye, it's much easier to get even coverage. There are some people who dye really beautiful shades of pastels. Anybody who's regularly shopped the online shop, no, I don't dye many pale colours. I tend to like them darker and moodier. Right, so that's the dark pink. Again, it's not going to be quite as dark as that once it's been dried. But we shall see how these all look, and whether I need to come back and make any changes. Okay, there we go. So I'll bring these over so you can have a closer look. Okay, these are our colours that we've got that we're working with. Oh, let's move that one so that you can see slightly better. So we've got our two shades of pink, which are definitely going to have enough contrast. A nice pale blue. This I'm hoping is going to come out slightly less orange. And this one is also going to get slightly more yellow once they've been heat set into the... So yeah, so those are our colours. They'll be heat set and they'll be dried. They should be ready for April for the beginning of April, which I think April 1st is the Saturday, isn't it? So it'll be probably Monday when they go up into the shop. Because, yeah. So I hope you've all enjoyed that very much. It was a reasonably quick one today. We didn't have too many umming and ahhing and thinking about what we were going to be, what I was going to be doing. I could be relatively decisive, but as I say, a couple of those colours may well end up changing. If if pastels are your thing and you like those, they'll be in the shop on Monday. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, and I shall see you all next month. Which will be after Wonderwool Wales, so I'll be looking even more tired than I look right now, and we shall see what we are dyeing up for May. Bye everybody, happy spinning, see you all next time.